Nation, welcome to episode 263 of Random Musings from the Clinical Trials Guru. Moving right along. This book's been out. I keep pushing it, but I have a bet with Chris on how many we can sell. And the audiobook's not even out yet. Amazon's sending it back for just some edits as far as the audio goes, something with the decibel levels that's coming out. But as you can see behind me, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening, just go look up The Comprehensive Guide to Clinical Research. That's our book. Very proud of it. It's my first real book I ever did. Chris Sauber wrote it with me. I'm flying solo today for the podcast. We did one yesterday, episode 262 with Chris, and towards the end, we started talking about physicians and why, me and Chris, we have a CRO. It's a startup CRO, DSCS CRO. We have I guess it's a thesis or it's not a hypothesis because we've been testing it throughout our entire careers, initially without even realizing it, and then later purposefully. We need, and the clinical research industry needs more physicians. That's it, period. Physicians that, ideally physicians that practice and that see patients, right? Now, with that being said, right, healthcare is also changing. Healthcare is changing to the point where it sometimes doesn't even make sense. And I'm not a doctor, but this episode is going to be for the physicians, for sure, for the physicians that are out there, but also for the site owners that have to use salesmanship and persuasion to get their physicians to join their site, right? Which is what I'm doing literally every week. I'm always looking for a new PI, just like I tell the sites all the time. Don't rely on just one physician for your business, for your site. One physician does not make a site. All right, that does not make a company. You can't sell that ever. You shouldn't rely on that for your financial well-being. I mean, you can get away with it for a while, but things happen. PIs move, PIs lose interest, PIs retire. All kinds of things happen, right? You never want to be too dependent on one PI. So this episode's going to be for the physicians out there that are considering research, the physicians out there that need to, or the site owners out there that need to persuade new physicians to do research. This is for you guys and gals. Actually, mostly gals and guys. Research skews female in most of the positions. Okay, and one day maybe we'll do a podcast episode on that. So at the end of 262, Chris and I kind of discussed, we talked about ambitions in clinical research, and then we started getting into physicians. And one of the things I've been noticing, healthcare is changing. I talk to a lot of physicians. I collaborate with a lot of physicians. They're all pretty much echoing the same theme. Healthcare is changing and no longer makes sense to do the same thing that a physician did 20 years ago, where it's just volume and then bill Medicare, bill insurance. That was the name of the game a decade ago, 2 decades ago, earlier. Healthcare has changed. Hospitals have gotten involved. Hospital systems have gotten involved. I'm not the hospital guru. I'm not the healthcare guru, so I'm not going to get too much into that. Actually, these physicians listening and watching understand what I'm talking about better than what I'm trying to articulate here. We're going to get into how clinical research is the magic unlock for you guys and gals that no one's talking about. And the reason no one who's in the clinical research industry is talking about it is because this industry is very secretive, very guarded. I don't know why, but it is. And it's counterproductive to what we're all trying to accomplish, which is enroll more patients, enroll better candidate patients, raise awareness amongst the general population about clinical research, and then have studies complete quicker, faster, cheaper, more efficient, right? The unlock there. I've really believed this the last 5 years, and I've been doing research full-time since 2005, and looking back now, in hindsight, I see that this is the case, right? And there's a couple physicians out there that I interact with that are taking it even a step further, actually several steps further than just getting involved as far as being a PI. I think that's the first step. The first step for you as a physician is get involved as a PI, all right? Now, there's a misconception amongst a lot of physicians as to what clinical research actually entails. And when you do clinical research from the commercial side, what we call industry-sponsored trials, all right? So not university, not academic research, industry-sponsored trials, you are not writing protocols, you're not submitting for grants, you're not coming up with ideas and then testing them on your patients. We're going to get into that later because I think that's the next step in this evolution for you as a PI. And I'm hitching my wagon onto as many physicians that I believe in as possible with good ideas, good background, and have a higher purpose and understand where they want to go. All right, they understand the science. I understand the research operations, and I understand how to put everything together. We're going to get into that, but we need more physicians interested about research because we need them to get their patients interested in research. It's a very simple thing, right? Very simple, yet no progress is being made, right? And the physicians that do learn this and figure this out eventually look to have other physicians join them, but they're afraid because the more they educate, the more they empower you as a PI, the less leverage they're going to have over you. Bottom line, that's how a lot of people think, right? I'm going the opposite. I think we need to empower more and more physicians. If they choose to work by themselves without me, that's fine. But if a small percentage of them choose to work with me, and an even smaller percentage of them follow my advice and take this to the levels we're about to get into on this podcast, then I'm going to do fine for myself. I'm going to do fine anyways, but this is the next step of clinical research. So healthcare is changing. Big hospitals are buying up, hospital systems are buying up practices. They're turning doctors into employees. I keep hearing from my physician colleagues, the days of the entrepreneurial physician are coming to an end. Now every physician that comes out of med school is immediately given big pay, a big salary, especially for specialists. They're given a huge salary. For psychiatrists in California, you come out of psychiatric school or psych residency, you get $300,000 to work for Kaiser or work for some of these big hospital systems, all right? How can I, as a research site owner trying to recruit these same psychiatrists, convince them to do research? I'm obviously not going to be able to outspend those guys. I'm not going to pay someone $300,000 for somebody that I don't even know I could get a study for, and for somebody who I don't even know if is going to be a good PI, right? So how do I compete as a site? I have to compete in other ways. I have to show them the bigger picture. But what we're starting to see is a lot of these doctors are taking the money, and there's nothing against that. They should do this. But for those of you that are still out there, and there are still plenty of you, private practice, solo practitioners, or maybe a small group practice, clinical research is the unlock. So when you start doing industry-sponsored trials, it's very different from academic research. You are basically in charge of overseeing employees at your site. So your clinic is called a site if you're doing research. That's SITE, all right, research site. You're employing study coordinators. You're employing, usually early on it's just the study coordinator and a couple assistants. Later it's a full team of people if you're getting a big site going. But early on it's just the coordinator usually, right? You're overseeing, you're maintaining safety oversight. You're making sure your coordinator's doing what they need to do. The best PIs are very involved. The best PIs are there to personally oversee what their coordinators are doing. This is how research should be conducted. A lot of doctors don't do all this, but they only do mediocre or subpar as far as their businesses are concerned. Generally, the more involved the PI is in his or her site, the better that site, the more successful that site becomes, especially if the PI is an owner. if the PI is an owner, and if you're listening or watching and you're a physician, this is where you want to be. This is the mentality you want. This is also a reason why people like me, site owners that need you to work for us, also kind of don't want you to figure it all out like I'm just describing. They want you to know enough about research to want to work for them, but not to be ambitious enough to do this on your own. So I think that's the problem. That's one of the reasons why there's so much secrecy around this space. Like, they just give you what you need to know. I used to be like that too as a site owner. I mean, it's a natural human tendency to be defensive and to just kind of guard what you have. But I believe in having a growth mindset, an expansive mindset. And look, if I'm on the offense and I'm just constantly bringing in new PIs, and you stick around to the end of this episode and you hear, if you're the PI or if you're the site owner, this is what you should be doing. Exactly what I'm doing. Instead of being secretive about the PIs and trying to sign them to these crazy contracts that are never going to be enforceable, you should think about collaborating long-term, higher purpose, bigger vision, right? So this is why the industry is guarded around this stuff. But anyways, the best sites are usually owned either by coordinators or coordinator PI partnership, or PIs who hire and train and personally oversee all the aspects of the study. All right, now that's the first level. Okay, once you start building up more and more studies for yourself as the PI, now you get to the point where you can start diversifying. So diversify. Do an indication that's outside of your specialty. Maybe you're a hypertension doctor or a family practice doctor, but you want to do psychiatry because right now psychiatry is hot. You partner with a psychiatrist. Now you're on the offense recruiting physicians, right? And this is all the more important for you. You're looking for physicians to add to your practice: psychiatrist, gynecologist, gastroenterologist, oncologist, different specialties. That's the next level. And now you're operating more of an SMO, site management organization. And you don't have to call yourself an SMO. SMOs have gotten a bad reputation over the years. That's starting to change because all the really bad ones went out of business. It's starting to change again. They're starting to come back in favor. But anyways, you're now, think of it like a McDonald's, right? Instead of making the burgers and getting paid, you are now teaching others how to make the burgers and run their business and get paid, and then you get paid off of them, off of their work, right? So it's kind of like a franchise when you think about an SMO model, but you can be as involved, and there's different variations of the SMO model. I'm not going to get into all that because that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. Matter of fact, that's an entire different book that we can write one day, Chris and I. But we're all booked out for now. But that's the next level, specializing up, getting other physicians to join you, getting a wider variety of patients so that no matter what the ebbs and flows are of your particular therapeutic indication that you started out in, remember what I say, everybody starts out specializing in something, but your goal is to be a generalist in this industry, right? This is another example of this thesis. All right, so that's the next step. You get a lot of different physicians to join you. You're doing studies. Now you're making several $1 million a year, all right, doing research. You can choose whether you want to actively be involved as a PI or not. Here's the third step, and this is something there's only a handful of physicians I've actually met in the last decade. And remember, I don't really go to too many conferences like Bio, like DIA. I do go. I'm going to go again this year, but even at those places, you don't see practitioners, right? You see scientific people. What I'm talking about, level 3, I guess we're going to just start patenting this formula or branding it. All right, level 1, solo PI. Level 2, start getting specialists, build an SMO or something like an SMO. Level 3, maintain all that, what you just did. Okay, keep your hands dirty as a PI. Continue to build your practice, your research clinic as an SMO, if you will. While you're doing all that, Start going to these conferences for your specialty. This is where you got to find your higher purpose. And by the way, with all of this being said, you still need to keep your private practice, the private practice outside of research, in order to feed your studies, okay? And you should encourage all your other physicians that join you, because they're going to be tempted and not want to do private practice anymore, because research, there's a lot more money in research. If you do it right, there's a lot more money in research. They're going to be tempted to stop private practice and do just research. They lose their value, because most of their value comes from their patients, right? So they need to keep that up. Maybe they can get some nurse practitioners or somebody underneath to just keep the patients coming in, right? Servicing the patients on the private practice side. And this applies to nurse practitioners and physician assistants as well. Just the same thing, same concept, except you can't be a PI, but you can be a sub-I and follow the same model, all right? So maintain your private practice, maintain studies that you're doing yourself, maintain studies that you're helping others do studies through your company, your SMO. Number 3, start going out to these conferences that you specialize in. Encourage your colleagues to go to conferences that they specialize in, but you're going to be the example for them, right? If chances are, if you are very passionate about a particular medical condition, you probably read peer-reviewed articles for fun about these conditions. You're probably deep into the science, and if you're not, there's nothing you can do. You can stop listening at this point. Levels 1, 2 are good enough. Like, you can make a lot of money off of that. You can maintain a really good lifestyle off of that. But if you are one of these doctors that thinks about the science and comes up with these ideas, and I meet them, I meet a handful every year, all right? They want to do that from the beginning, and nothing wrong with that either, but I think it's more practical to follow my step 1, step 2, step 3. Start going to these conferences, start networking. And by the way, you're going to be networking with all these sponsors, these medical monitors from the studies you're already doing at your level 1 and 2. You're going to be meeting with monitors, with medical monitors. There's going to be investigator meetings that you're going to go to. You're going to meet the scientific people behind the protocols. You're going to get to talk, the inside baseball on schizophrenia, or the inside baseball on ulcerative colitis. You're going to network. These are people at big pharma sometimes. These are people at biotechs. These are people that are looking for people like you to do investigator-initiated trials. That's step 3. You already have the platform to do research, but now, in addition to doing the industry-sponsored trials, because you're making money off of those, in addition to having your other physician colleagues do their industry-sponsored trials, because you're making money off of those too, in addition to seeing your private practice patients, because you need that to feed your studies, and you're making some money off of that, you're now going to write the protocol. You're now going to submit to these pharmas for grants. Okay, and by the way, you could submit to the NIH, National Institute of Health, for grants too. You should do both, but the pharma are the more practical with my outline that I'm drawing up for you here. And now you get into, okay, what's your idea? What's your protocol? Okay, the pharma company is going to be behind it, but now they need a budget. And now they need a place to do it. They're going to want a pilot study. You're turning into a CRO at this point, where you're managing a trial. Because if the pilot study goes well for your investigator-initiated trial, and the sponsor wants to do another trial with more patients this time, they're going to want you to do the same thing, but they're also going to, or you, because you've listened to this podcast or watched this video, you're going to propose it to them before they bring it up, because they're big pharma, they're slow, you need to be fast. You're going to propose it to them, hey, why don't we do this study, but we're going to change it up a little bit. The results were good on the pilot, but here's what we're going to look at, and we need more patients. I have colleagues, because remember, you're going to these conferences now, you're networking, right? You go to investigator meetings, you're networking with other physicians. You're now a CRO. You're now running, while you're doing all the other stuff I just mentioned in the last 20 minutes, you're doing even more now as a CRO. Eventually, if you can get to step 4, where you create your own IP, intellectual property, I don't care if it's a device, if it's a diagnostic, if it's a drug, whatever it may be, right? With the help of pharma, with the help of investors, maybe with your own money that you've made over the last decade doing this, because it's going to take you about a decade to get to step 4. You could probably do it in 5 years, but that's anything less than 5 years not realistic, because it's going to take you a year just to get to step 1 in this hierarchy that I'm laying out for you. So 5 years, 10 years, you can start creating your own IP, your intellectual property. And now, if you're really passionate about this and you find your higher purpose, and like I said, these physicians, they're not a dime a dozen, right? But they're out there. They're usually not doing private practice, and they're not doing step 1 or step 2 of research. They're usually somebody in an academic institution that has an idea and then tries to submit to the NIH for grants. That's one way to do it. That's the slow route. Okay, that's the very bureaucratic route. You're doing it the industry route, much quicker, and you're making money along the way. Okay, and you're servicing a real need. You have patients, you're putting them in studies, you're contributing to the advancement of medicine, right? So there's a lot of higher purpose things going on here, but getting to that end IP, learning how to take a device, diagnostic, drug from pre-IND through phase 1 through 4 or 1 through 3, then get the NDA, right? That's where I want to hitch my wagon to, and that's the entire reason why I have a CRO, is to help those people out. Help those people who are maybe at step 1 or step 2, or maybe they're not at any step. Maybe they're at step 0, but they want to get to step 1 and 2, or maybe they're just listening to this now. I want to hitch my wagon to those people. If you're a site owner, rather than being secretive about the industry, you should start thinking like this. I mean, I'm not going to tell people what to do, but this is my advice for you. You can do whatever you want. It's fine. This is the way to go, all right? Because this is where you're still going to make money. I mean, you're operating your site. That's not going to go anywhere. But you always need new physicians. So how do you collaborate with them and both achieve a higher purpose? And that's steps 1 through 4. I just came up with those steps on the fly, like literally throughout the course of this podcast. We're going to turn this into a webinar. I'm that passionate about this topic, so that's going to be our webinar very soon on this topic. I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. If you're a site owner, would you be comfortable taking your PI prospects through this course? Remember, this is not for all of them. Not every PI is going to have some crazy idea that they want to research further on their own, right? Like this is their special few, but I would say it's about 10% of the physicians out there. But you can have, I would say 90% of the physicians with a private practice are more than capable of getting to step 2 for you. And if you're a site owner, that's really all you need. What more can you ask for? But there's always more. There's always more. And if you get some at step 3 and even fewer at step 4, that's all you need. That's the difference between millions and potentially billions. All right? Risk-free for the most part. So let me know what you think about this, right? Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. It's been a fun episode. I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.